Good evening. My name is Charles Cagnan, and I'm from San Francisco. I have a environmental background, a corporate social responsibility background, a corporate planning background. I was a senior planner for a number of years, and I'm a member of the National Association of Business Economists, but I'm speaking here as a layperson to try and talk about some considerations for this plan that I think might be valuable. Dr. Thomas Sowell, the noted economist down at Stanford, has written about the cost of living in the Bay Area. And he attributes the cost of living in the Bay Area to land use restrictions and regulations. And this plan basically takes the existing land use restrictions and burdens and exacerbates them. And it also accentuates them over time, because there's a sense of wanting to sort of continually compress people over the 25-year forecast here. So what this does is that the government's creating shortages. And so what that does is that it drives up prices. And so what you're having with this plan is fundamentally a policy which condemns the Bay Area to be the high-cost place of living and the high-cost place of working. And that high cost has consequences environmentally, since this is an environmental section. So, for example, like if I wanted to buy a house in Fairfield, such as one of the San Francisco supervisors did for $250,000, and the land use boundary says that I'm not allowed to do that anymore, and I'm forced to not live in the cheap area, and I'm forced to live in Concord and pay $400,000. That $150,000 is economic waste. And that economic waste percolates throughout every activity in the community because it's not isolated to one home. And that economic waste has to be paid for through economic activities that people would not have had to do outside of the government impositions. And so those wasteful economic activities that you're imposing on society are polluting. There's no, so when you think about all of this stuff you're talking about, the thing you really have to look for is absolute cost and absolute price. If I were going to boil this down to one simple phrase for you, I would say price equals pollution. And so if you're interested in, if you're not reducing price, you're increasing pollution according to this plan. And I don't see anything that's going to, anything in this plan that has a kind of an economic consideration about how much economic waste is being generated by this and how much pollution is accompanying that. Similarly, along those lines, businesses that are going to consider doing business here, particularly the ones that involve physical items, production of goods and distribution of goods, those businesses will find themselves, as the speaker before pointed out, those businesses will find themselves being increasingly non-competitive because of the cost structure of living here and working here. And what you're going to find is that those businesses are going to exit. So basically what we're talking about here is most union jobs are toast. You know, the woman before me was talking about that. These businesses will move to cheaper places, and they will truck in their goods to the Bay Area because doing business here will be a mistake. They'll be uncompetitive, and they won't be able to compete with people that are outside the Bay Area. And I think that what you're going to have to plan for is an increase in, this is maybe speculative, but I think you should plan for an increase in truck traffic on the roads here. Similarly, as we've seen in other areas with smart growth, such as Portland, which is the one that's been studied actively, is that the people flee smart growth. And so what's happened in Portland is that commute times have increased because people have fled for their freedom outside of the growth boundaries, and they commute in. They commute longer, but they commute, but they want to, you know, they're not, people are not mechanical objects. And I think you're treating people as mechanical objects with this whole vision. It's scary. It's scary the way you're treating people in this thing. So you should expect that road use will increase and commute times will increase according to this thing, because you will drive people away, and you've seen it now. You know, particularly in the South Bay, it's you know, with the restrictions that are there, it's easy for them to find refuge in places that are outside the growth boundaries. I think that if you really want to, I don't know how serious you are about this stuff, but you know, Michael Tanner at the Cato Institute has studied this somewhat extensively, and I would recommend that rather than hiring Transform or ICLEI, that you go back and hire somebody that actually has done some real work on this thing and realize what kind of damage you're about to do to us. And so, you know, there are other people that probably you could join with, but you really need to kind of like have a fresh point of view about this from a professional basis, because what you're describing is just, you're living in a fantasy world. You know, there's a reason why the Soviet Union was ecological disaster and that the West is ecologically clean. That wealth, as people get more wealthy, they become cleaner. They become more naturally designed for a higher quality of life. And so the people in the Bay Area, even before you came here, decided that they wanted to be green. Who would have thought it, that they could have been green independent of the MTC? And I think the other thing I want to mention here is the capital expenditures. You know, you're spending almost $300 billion on capital expenditures without one shred of input from the people who are going to be buying it. So, you know, the notion that this capital is going to be optimized is another completely fanciful notion. The people that are the taxpayers that live here are the people that are going to be paying for this stuff, and they're going to be using it, and these are the people that should be making the purchase decision. And there's absolutely no provision in this thing for the people that are going to be paying for this thing with the hours out of their lives, and the people that are going to be using it for their own conveniences to actually have a say in whether they actually want to buy this stuff or not. You're deciding it as if it's true, but we have vivid evidence with Solyndra that two-thirds of the green money that was allocated in the last 3 years was wasted. You know, we have a situation in the United States where the country is reeling. The country is on its back because the government distorted the real estate markets, and you've got a 25-year plan to distort the real estate markets.
Decimate it completely.
And finally, I think that so the idea with this capital, when you look at the waste that's incorporated in this capital budget, I don't know whether you want to use the 2/3 figure that we have from the Solyndra model, but let's just call this capital Solyndra 2. And so you got to have some kind of a thing where some of that capital is just going to be wasted, and it's going to take economic activity out of Americans, and then that economic activity is just going to be put to waste, and any pollution that was responsible for that creation of those billions of dollars is going to be excess pollution that wouldn't have been there had there been a rational process for capital deployment. You know, finally, I just want to say, you know, off the side of kind of like, look, basically what I'm saying is that wasted economic activity means pollution that shouldn't be there. And you've got a plan that wastes economic activity. But really what's really funny about this is that, like, this is a terrifying plan. I mean, I'm here because I'm scared to death. This is, you know, I've been involved with, you know, green stuff my whole life and strategy and thinking. But this is the most terrifying thing I've seen in my life. And the thing that's really scary to me is that you're not scared.